Your lawn is brown in the spots where the sun hit hardest, thin along the sidewalk where the ground baked all summer, tired everywhere else. You watered, you mowed, you didn't ignore it. Summer just did what summer does, and it doesn't care how much effort went in. Here's the part worth actually hearing. Right now, at its most beaten down, your lawn is closer to recovery than it will be at almost any other point until next spring. The ground's still warm, the worst heat has broken or is about to, and the roots are alive and waiting. Everything you do in the next few weeks lands on a lawn that can actually use it. I got this framing from a turf consultant named Rosalind Chen, who spent close to 18 years managing recovery programs for municipal athletic fields outside Sacramento, California, ground that takes brutal seasonal abuse and has to bounce back on a hard deadline every single fall. She told me something that reframed how I think about this window. Everyone wants to know what to add first. The real first question is what to stop. Here's why that matters. A lawn coming out of heat stress is more fragile than most people give it credit for. The root system is shallow from surviving summer. The blades are already damaged. The soil's been baked and compacted. Keep walking across it daily, mowing on the same tight schedule, spraying weed killer on the brown spots, or hitting it with fertilizer to force green faster, and you're loading fresh injury onto injury a stressed plant can't absorb at the same time it's trying to recover. So the first move, for about 2 weeks, is stopping. Stop heavy foot traffic across the worst sections if you can redirect it. Let the grass grow slightly longer than usual rather than mowing on your normal tight schedule. Short, stressed blades recover slower than blades with enough leaf area left to catch light and rebuild energy. And stop spraying anything on a stressed lawn entirely. A weed killer applied to a root system that's already struggling can take out the surrounding grass right along with the weed, leaving a bare patch where you only had thin grass before. The weeds will still be there in 3 weeks once the lawn is stronger and better able to handle treatment. The grass can't afford to wait that long to start recovering, but it also can't afford another chemical stress on top of the one it's already fighting. If raising the mower deck feels like giving something up, it helps to remember what taller grass is actually doing during this window beyond just looking a little shaggier. More leaf surface means more capacity to capture sunlight and rebuild the energy reserves the plant spent surviving the heat. And a slightly taller canopy also shades the soil surface a little more, reducing how much moisture evaporates between waterings. It's a small adjustment that compounds through the whole rest period rather than a cosmetic afterthought. During those 2 weeks, water every 3 to 4 days, deeply enough that a screwdriver pushed into the ground afterward slides down several inches without much resistance. That's genuinely the whole routine. No fertilizer, no spray, no forced schedule. 2 weeks of stopping isn't wasted time. It's the ground building back enough capacity to actually receive what comes next. Rosalind described this rest period as the single most commonly skipped step across the recovery program she's run, precisely because it looks like doing nothing while the lawn still looks bad. She said the instinct to intervene immediately, to throw something at a struggling lawn the moment you notice it, is almost universal and almost always counterproductive on ground that's genuinely stressed rather than simply neglected. On the athletic fields her crews manage, the fields that get a genuine 2-week rest period before any active treatment consistently outperform the ones rushed straight into fertilizer and reseeding, even though the rested fields look worse for longer at the start. It's a hard sell to a homeowner staring at a brown yard, she admitted, but it's the difference between a lawn that recovers on its own timeline and one that gets pushed into further stress trying to force a faster result. Once that rest period's done, the crown test from our dormant versus dead lawn video tells you exactly how far gone each section actually is. Pull back the brown blades and check whether the crown at the soil line is still pale and firm or gone dark and brittle. If you haven't run that test yet, that video walks through it in full, and it's worth doing before you spend anything on this section. Now let's talk about something that quietly sabotages a lot of recoveries, even when the watering is done exactly right. Thatch. Run your hand through the grass at the base and pull it back gently. On healthy turf, you'll feel soft, living material between the blades and the soil. On a lawn that's had several seasons of regular fertilizer and frequent clippings, you may instead feel a dense, matted layer sitting between the grass and the ground. Dry, spongy, sometimes an inch thick or more. That's thatch, a buildup of old grass stems and roots that haven't fully broken down. A thin layer is normal and even somewhat beneficial. Once it gets thick, it becomes a wall. Water hits it and runs sideways instead of soaking through. Anything you apply sits in that layer and never reaches the roots. New seed lands on it and never touches actual soil. NC State University Extension turf research identifies thatch buildup as one of the more overlooked reasons a lawn stays pale and unresponsive after a hard summer, even when watering practices are otherwise correct. Checking for it and clearing it is straightforward. Work a stiff tine dethatching rake firmly across the lawn in one direction, then again in the opposite direction, section by section. Dense, gray mats of dead material coming up confirm thatch was part of your problem. If the rake comes up mostly clean, that's good news. Move on, since this wasn't your bottleneck. Rake up everything that comes loose and remove it entirely, rather than leaving it sitting on the surface, since leaving pulled thatch in place just rebuilds the same wall in a different form. For a larger lawn or heavier buildup, a rented power dethatcher covers more ground and pulls slightly deeper than a hand rake can manage. Either way, the goal is a surface that's actually open, giving water and anything you apply next a clear path down to the roots. Timing this matters too. Early fall, once the worst heat has broken but while the ground is still warm enough for grass to actively grow and recover, is genuinely the best window for dethatching. Do it too early, while heat stress is still peaking, and you're adding another physical disturbance to a plant that's already struggling. Do it too late, once growth has slowed heading into winter, and the lawn doesn't have enough active growing time left to recover from the disturbance before cold weather arrives. That window, right after the stop and rest period, once you're seeing signs of active recovery rather than continued decline, is exactly the right moment. With thatch cleared and watering handled through the rest period, there's one more piece worth knowing about, because it explains why some recovering lawns green up within 2 weeks, while others sit dull for a month, even with everything else done correctly. The hottest months don't just dehydrate roots, they can quiet down the living part of the soil, the biological activity that actually moves water and nutrients from the ground into the plant. You can water correctly, aerate correctly, and still end up with a lawn that sits pale for weeks because that underground exchange has slowed to a crawl. Liquid seaweed extract is worth applying at this stage specifically because it isn't a fertilizer and doesn't push growth directly. What it carries into the soil helps roots recover their capacity to take in water and nutrients, and helps restart the soil biological activity that went quiet during the driest stretch. Think of it less as feeding the lawn and more as reopening the pathway that lets feeding actually work once you get to that step. Rosalind mentioned tracking exactly this pattern on athletic fields recovering from a hard summer season. Sections treated with a seaweed extract application consistently came back to color faster and more evenly than sections that only received water and fertilizer, and the difference was most visible in the second and third week rather than immediately. Apply it diluted through a pump sprayer or watering can across the affected sections, following your product's label dilution rate. For a genuinely stressed lawn, stay toward the lighter end of that range rather than the heavier one. Give it 2 to 3 days to work into the soil before applying any fertilizer on top of it, and don't apply both on the same day. Once you start seeing the first hints of green returning in the pale spots, that's your signal to bring in a fall formula fertilizer specifically, not a high nitrogen mix built to push fast top growth, but a formula built to strengthen roots heading into cooler weather. The seaweed extract opens the door, the fall fertilizer is what actually walks through it. A few honest limitations worth naming before you commit to this whole sequence. If your area's first hard frost is less than 4 weeks out and you haven't overseeded yet, that seeding window has likely already closed for the year. New grass needs time to establish real roots before the ground freezes, and seed put down too close to frost can sprout briefly and then die before it ever holds. In that situation, do the rest period, the thatch work, and the watering this fall, and hold overseeding for early spring instead, knowing you'll be working against spring weed pressure rather than the cleaner late summer window. And if bare sections are bare because of heavy shade rather than summer stress specifically, overseeding won't solve that permanently. Grass genuinely struggles in deep shade and thins back out the following summer, no matter how well it establishes in fall. So a shade-tolerant seed variety, or a different ground cover altogether, handles that particular spot more honestly than repeated reseeding attempts. There's one more honest point worth making about the full recovery timeline, because it's easy to get impatient partway through. Rosalind was clear that most of what makes a lawn look genuinely good the following spring gets decided during exactly this fall window, not in spring itself. A lawn that's brown and thin in early fall, handled correctly through the stop period, thatch removal, and seaweed activation, tends to come out of winter noticeably stronger than one where the owner skipped straight to fertilizer and reseeding without addressing what was actually blocking recovery underneath. The visible improvement often shows up weeks after the work is done, which makes it tempting to conclude nothing's happening and abandon the process early, right before it was about to start paying off. If this changed how you're approaching your lawn this fall, hit subscribe. We're covering this recovery process one piece at a time, no filler. Go watch our dormant versus dead lawn video next if you haven't run the crown test yet. It's the step that tells you exactly which sections need overseeding and which will come back on their own. And once you've cleared thatch and are ready to reseed, our overseeding video covers the aeration and seed same-day approach that gets the best results in freshly opened ground. Tell me in the comments, did the rake bring up thatch or come up mostly clean? I read every comment. See you in the next one.